Congo, what is it? I told you only to call me if there's a crisis. Yeah. The Congo covers a massive swath of Central Africa and is home to abundant cultural and natural resources such as uranium, diamonds, copper, these cool masks, these awesome swords, and lots of trees. Wait a minute! The people of Congo had a pretty similar reaction to this, and after decades of Belgian domination were finally able to secure their independence in a pretty rapid series of events. We would like independence, please. Yeah? And I would like to not have a Chef Boyardee body pillow as my only source of affection. But here I am, cold and alone. Curse you, Carol, I just want my kids back! Okay, we'll let you guys be on an advisory board to help us run the colony, but you aren't getting independent. We advise you to grant us independence. Well, color me green and call me a cucumber. It looks like they got us, boys. The only problem was that Belgium didn't want to leave right away. A new government needed to be picked first, and if you think American politics are messy, oh boy, let me introduce you to the 1960 Congolese elections. There was the Confederation of Tribal Associations of Katanga, the National Movement of Congo and Leopoldville, the Democratic Rally of Lac Kwango and Kwilu, and the Movement for the Evolution and Development of the Rural Economy of Congo, and those are only the big ones with acronyms over 4 letters. All in all, there were over 50 political parties on the ballot, almost all of which supported a federal state that would allow Congo's various regions to remain autonomous. However, the party that got the most votes, the MNCL, led by Patrice Lumumba, wanted a unitary state with a strong central government. Nowhere was this more problematic than in the province of Katanga. Katanga had the majority of Congo's precious natural resources, and the many ethnic groups there felt no particular loyalty to the bigwigs in Leopoldville. To Katanga, a unitary state was unacceptable. This dissatisfaction was shared by the leading politician of Katanga, Moise Tshombe, who refused to cooperate with Lumumba's growing coalition government. However, this act of defiance backfired when Lumumba decided to just ignore Katanga, so the province was basically left with no representation in the new government. A barely united Congo then officially became independent on June 30th, 1960, with Patrice Lumumba as prime minister and this guy named Joseph Kasavubu as president. However, the young nation was immediately beset with problems. Actually, it was kicked and sat on by problems. For one, the new government, for all its enthusiasm, was pretty lacking in experience. The Belgians hadn't exactly been looking forward to Congolese independence, so not much was done to prepare the people or the country. For example, there were only 16 people with college degrees in the entire country at the time of independence, making it the second most uneducated place on Earth after a certain house in Los Angeles. Secondly, even though Congo was gonna be independent, Belgium didn't want Congo to be actually independent. Therefore, they were actively trying to keep the country weak so that they could exploit it. And then the army mutinied. One condition of Belgium granting Congo independence was that all of the army's white officers had to stay in place. However, in a stunning plot twist, the Congolese soldiers also wanted to be officers and realized that they had most of the guns already, so you can probably see where that went. Belgium then used this mutiny as an excuse to send in their own soldiers to pacify the country. Just for fun, they also pointed out that the whole thing looked a little communist to them, which was enough to get away with anything in the 60s. The central government in Leopoldville responded to this clear violation of sovereignty by breaking off diplomatic relations with Belgium, but the governor of Katanga, Moise Tshombe, invited the Belgians into his province because screw Leopoldville. Tshombe then got the Belgian army to disarm all federal troops in the region, declared Katanga independent, and began raising a literal mercenary army. Which is crazy. Just think about that. Before crocheting was invented, the only weekend activity young men could come up with was going to Africa and killing UN peacekeeping forces. Maybe this generation has gone soft. Anyway, on July 14th, 1960, 2 weeks after Congo gained independence, the UN finally decided that enough was enough and told Belgium to withdraw their soldiers. However, in order to enforce this, the UN needed some good, hardy, neutral troops. Hi, I like Lefse. I haven't fought a war in like 150 years. Have you heard about IKEA? This was the most neutral country you could find. Switzerland told me to kill myself and then punted me off a mountain. However, as UN forces rolled into Congo, it became clear to Lumumba that they weren't actually that helpful. In their attempt to be a neutral force, the UN wouldn't allow its soldiers to do anything. The UN claimed that it was just a peacekeeping organization and wouldn't engage in offensive operations, but we've all seen what they did in Korea, so we know that's baloney. In the midst of this inaction, the province of South Kasai, supported by the Belgians, also seceded from Congo because screw Leopoldville. Understandably frustrated, Lumumba again asked the UN to help him restore government rule, which the UN again refused. So, with no other options, Lumumba took drastic action. Breaking news! Congo's central government has launched an offensive into South Kasai, and get this, they're using Soviet military equipment. In response to the Congolese offensive, the UN, with American backing, shut down all of the radio stations in the country in an attempt to disrupt Lumumba's communications and halt his attack, because screw Leopoldville. The president of Congo, Joseph Kasavubu, then dismissed Lumumba as prime minister, which quickly became awkward when Lumumba responded by dismissing Kasavubu as president, effectively leaving Congo without a government. The UN thought that this chaos was bad, so they occupied all of Congo's airports, but the US thought that this chaos was good, and used it to launch a coup to replace Patrice Lumumba, the stinky communist, with Joseph Mobutu, the power-hungry militant authoritarian who at least wasn't a dirty commie. With the backing of the CIA, Mobutu then occupied the Congolese parliament, arrested Lumumba, and took over command of the army, but kept Kasavubu on as president because screw Leopold. Wait, that doesn't make sense here. At this point, Congo was split into 4 parts. The central government, run by Kasavubu, controlled the area around Leopoldville. The parts of the government still loyal to Lumumba controlled the area around Stanleyville. Tshombe and his mercenaries still controlled Katanga, and a Belgian-backed secessionist group controlled South Kasai. You got that? Alright, good, because you're going to be tested on it tomorrow. Arrested by Mobutu, Lumumba was kept under house arrest by UN forces until he escaped to try to meet up with his supporters in Stanleyville. However, on the way, he was captured by Mobutu's forces. Miraculously, though, Lumumba escaped again and was able to flee to a UN base where he begged the soldiers there to protect him. The UN responded by telling him that they were neutral so they wouldn't take sides, and then promptly handed him over to Mobutu's men. Under Belgian pressure, Lumumba was then flown to Katanga where he was beaten, forced to eat his own speeches, and shot in order to thin out the character list and make this narrative easier to follow. Now that Lumumba was dead, the UN was conveniently given permission to use force, and the 4 factions in Congo finally came to the negotiating table and agreed to start disarming. However, Katanga didn't really do anything with their giant mercenary army, so the UN started to disarm them forcibly until Belgium came in and told the UN that they would take care of it for them. Alright guys, thanks so much for putting all your old weapons in this pile. Because look at all these new ones we got for you! The UN then invaded Katanga and forced Tshombe to flee, but on the way to discuss peace, the UN Secretary General's plane crashed and Tshombe just came back again. In November of 1961, the UN, under new leadership, launched another offensive into Katanga and had mostly defeated them by December. A ceasefire then went into effect, and the UN helped Mobutu and Kasavubu reconquer Stanleyville in 1962. However, seeing this redeployment as an opportunity, Tshombe broke the ceasefire and attacked the UN forces, and was immediately crushed and fled to Spain. All of Congo was now back under Kasavubu's control, and the UN figured that they could just pack up and go home, which they did. And then another rebellion broke out in Stanleyville. Unable to defeat the rebels without UN support, Kasavubu invited Tshombe back from Spain to be his prime minister and rehire all of his mercenaries. Tshombe and his personal army then defeated the rebels and reunited the country again. However, now that he had a big army again, Tshombe started talking about wanting to be president instead of Kasavubu, so Kasavubu dismissed him and the two men began a second war. Just kidding, Mobutu and the CIA overthrew both of them and established a one-party dictatorship. Yay, democracy!